I think it's a sense like all universities, you're not going to know anyone. Are you going to make new friends? Are you going to be able to fit in? You get that at any university. But in a place like Cambridge, it feels more, it feels a bit more extreme. It's like people from everywhere. You're going to feel maybe like you're not of the quality everyone else is. You're not potentially good enough to be here. I think that's probably the kind of thoughts I had in my head, like, is this the place I want to be? But I think you get to know that actually it's a really lovely place. There are wonderful people here.
Yeah.
And if you are passionate about your subject and you love your subject, it's a really good place to come.
Yeah. Hello everyone, welcome to Cambridge from the Inside. We're here with a new guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sam and I'm a first year geographer at Trinity Hall.
Nice. And we're here today to talk about application advice, talking through what your application was like, how you came to decide to apply to Cambridge and how you found Cambridge so far. So can you tell us how did you come about choosing to study geography and why Cambridge?
Yeah, so I've always loved geography. So like as a subject in school, like GCSE and A level, and like I'm a big walker and like hiker, and I've always liked the outdoors and that kind of thing. So in the sense, geography's always kind of been the subject I've gravitated towards. I did A level politics as well, and so in A level I was sort of, do I prefer geography? Do I prefer politics? And I sort of came to the conclusion, I think I broadly prefer geography because I think it involves a lot of politics and I like the human and the physical element. In terms of Cambridge in particular, I looked a little bit I just looked at lots of different courses and I thought Cambridge is obviously like a world famous institution. And I broadly thought, I liked the look of the course, so I had a little bit of look at Oxford as well. I think I preferred some of the topics here. Again, I think they can kind of change year on year, but I liked the look of what was here, and I liked the idea of coming to a university like this. So I thought, why not apply? Just give it a try. I was sort of set on, I want to do geography at university. Why not try and go for somewhere which is really good, somewhere that's interesting?
No, it makes sense. Did you check out the city? Like, did you visit Cambridge or Oxford before choosing to apply?
I think I visited Oxford just on a day trip, that kind of thing, with family. And Cambridge, I think I came down for like an open day, had a look around, and I had a talk with some of the people who sort of teach geography here. And they were really nice. They were really interesting. I remember being in a lab. I can't remember what it was on, but that was something I was like, I really enjoy this. I liked the sense of Cambridge as a city, as a sort of small and compact place, but somewhere the architecture is beautiful here. The sense you get of like a place to study, to live. I liked that. And I liked the geography department. I had a good look around. I thought, it looks like the place to be. So let's apply.
Nice. And how far did you have to travel when you came to visit? Like, whereabouts are you from?
So I live in Sheffield. So it's I'd say obviously there are closer places to be, but there are also further places in the UK. So it's not super convenient, but So I came down just with my mum, I think, on an open day, had a look around. It was a point when I think I was definitely committed to geography. I was just, is Cambridge a place I want to like think about studying in? Is it and you get the sense Cambridge is obviously a wonderful place to like be and spend time. So
I mean, I think it's something that's kind of not talked about enough, but kind of like train costs and distances are like a huge factor when students are thinking about universities. What is the travel distance like from here to Sheffield, and was that a factor when you're like deciding which unis to apply to?
So I don't know the exact distance, but it's definitely not. It's not close. I remember I came down in the car with my mum. We're quite lucky to have an electric car, so it's a bit easier. So with train tickets, I understand that they can be quite expensive. I applied to a number of other universities, mainly in the north of England, that were a bit closer to Sheffield. I think, broadly speaking, if you're thinking about between somewhere like Cambridge or Oxford, they're quite similar distance from Sheffield. But the other universities I applied to were like more in the north of England. I definitely didn't apply to London universities, for example. It's just not an option for me because I think the accommodations was too expensive and that kind of thing. But,
so would I be right in thinking that Cambridge, you just felt like Cambridge would have been worth the distance?
Yeah, and I think one of the main things is like for example, London universities, I get the sense that it can be quite expensive to live and study in somewhere like London. That was never an option I really thought would be good. Somewhere like Cambridge is, we have shorter terms here. The accommodation licenses tend to be a little bit shorter. So that was more appropriate, if that makes sense.
Because instead of paying a year-long accommodation fee in London, which would have been very expensive. And if it's also important to mention for anyone who's watching, the ethos at both Oxford and Cambridge is that no student should have finances as a barrier for them to study at Oxford, Cambridge. So if you were in financial hardship or you're worried about affording to study at university, the college or the university will find a way to support you so that your finances weren't a barrier. It was the main reason I wanted to go to Oxbridge, and it was fully supported financially. Going to the beginning with your admissions process, when did you start thinking about applying, and when did you start, like, for people watching, when do you think they should start their admissions process?
So I was throughout sort of year 12 and year 13, I was doing my A-levels and I was sort of weighing up geography or politics. I had a good think about maybe doing like combined honours courses at some places. And it was through that time of doing my studying, and in particular, I did an EPQ where I was doing quite a bit of reading around my subject, that made me think I want geography. And I think that was a key part of, in terms of not strictly the admissions process, but enabling me to have the knowledge and the understanding and the background reading to be able to go into an admissions process. So I would say in that sense, the admissions process sort of starts in sixth form when you're thinking about what would you like to do, what are you interested in, having a good read around. And
how did you find each of the steps, like the personal statement, preparing for the interview? I assume there isn't an admissions assessment for geography?
No, there's not. So
at least for now.
There's not for now. I really liked writing my personal statement because I had done quite a bit of like extra reading, and I'm obviously interested in geography, and it was an opportunity to really talk about like what I love about geography and why I love it in particular, and sort of showcase. So in lots of my personal statement, I was talking about the kind of stuff I'd read, the kind of not just what I'd read, but what I thought about it, why I thought it was interesting or not interesting, or I think.
Do you remember what kind of things you talked about in your personal statement?
I think I talked a little bit about sort of stuff external to like academics and stuff. So I talked a bit about my football and my life beyond study, but mainly I was looking at my subject and why I love geography, why I sort of thought I was suitable to do geography here, which was I'm passionate about it, and I can show this through evidence of, like, I did an EPQ, for example, which is like, it's a sort of research type project. And it's something I'd recommend people do if like they get the opportunity to. And it enabled me to sort of talk about the reading I'd done for that. I thought about bigger questions linked to geography, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, nice. And what was your EPQ on?
So my EPQ the title was, "To what extent does physical geography impact the politics of a nation?" So it was kind of geopoliticsy themed. I wasn't actually very happy with the way the dissertation itself sort of turned out, the writing aspect. But part of the EPQ is sort of your reflections on what went well, what didn't. And I learned a lot through that process of not only I love geography, but also geopolitics. Geography is so much more than I actually first realised. I obviously now want to go and study it further, because I realise it's so much bigger. So it was mainly looking at how physical geography impacts politics. And it made me learn a lot about what geopolitics is and what I knew geopolitics, or what I thought geopolitics was, but what it might not be, if that makes sense. And I talked about that in my personal statement a bit. The reading I'd done, and other reading that I'd found sort of stimulating and wanted to comment on, or feel like I thought that academics might think that's an interesting take. Why would you have that opinion? And I think I could argue that well.
Nice. It reminds me, is that similar to the Prisoners of Geography book?
Yes. So I talked about that. Nice. I read Tim Marshall. So Prisoners of Geography. He has a selection of books. I read that book quite a while ago in my studying, and I come back to it over and over again. I reread it for my EPQ. And it's a book that I find interesting because of what it says, but also it's an example of a specific kind of geopolitics. And that's I talked about that in my personal statement, for example, and my potential criticisms of how I interpreted that book and that kind of thing.
Would I be right in thinking that in your personal statement, it's you want to show how do I word this? You want to show, rather than talking about listing a list of books that you read, you want to talk about what you've taken from them. Can you talk about how, explore that a bit more, please?
Yeah. So I think it's very easy to be like, I've read this. It's not about it's about evidencing that you have the ability to read deeper and think maybe what I'm reading, you don't take it at face value. You're like, maybe what I'm reading isn't correct. Why don't I think it's correct? Why do I think an alternative is there? So for example, with Prisoners of Geography, I used it as a way to talk about this thing called environmental determinism, which is a key feature of some aspects of geopolitics, classical geopolitics. And I used it as a springboard to talk about a specific aspect of geopolitics I was interested in. And I knew that, for example, we study a bit of geopolitics in first year. Of course, the course can sort of change, but I knew we would potentially be looking at something like that. So I wanted to show I'm really interested in this, and I have a thoughtful contribution to that conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's really cool. And they'll definitely recognise that when they read the personal statement, that you've been looking into what's on the course. Sounds like you knew what you're doing, doing a lot of super quick activities. Was that something that was entirely driven by yourself, or did your school provide a lot of support?
So I think I was very fortunate in the school I went to. My head teacher was really helpful in the application process, and talking through how you write a good personal statement, what people are looking for. I think the Cambridge University website has some good sort of stuff on the kind of things. I remember doing sort of online webinar things with outreach people. And that wasn't just from Cambridge. That was, I think, some colleges at Oxford do that as well. And looking at how you write a good personal statement, and the kinds of things people are looking for. I think that would be a good place to start. In terms of, the reading was mainly, so I picked an EPQ, and I know not everyone has that opportunity, but I think if you have that, you should go for that. And the EPQ sort of obviously made me you have to read some stuff, and then from that reading I was like, I find this really interesting and really stimulating. I'll go and read some more stuff. In terms of background geography books, I've always been interested broadly in the world, how it is, why the world is the way it is, that kind of thing. So I'd done that sort of reading in the past, but I'd say the EPQ was the springboard to go and do more stuff. if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So were there many people in your school applying to Oxford and Cambridge? Like, was this something that you and your peers were doing, or was this something that's entirely sprung from your EPQ?
No, so my school was really helpful in the application process. So I think there was like 6 or 7-ish people who got offers from Oxford and Cambridge. I think there's one person that went to Oxford and the others went to Cambridge. There's actually a couple in Trinity Hall as well.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, there was, so our head teacher went to both Oxford and Cambridge, and she was really, really helpful, really insightful, and had clear sort of guidance on. So we would have like sessions after school on sort of what the interview process might be like, how you approach that, what kind of stuff you might be doing. So it's definitely like a school-led, these are the kinds we can be, and how we help potential people who are thinking about applying to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah,
that was definitely from the school in that sense.
Yeah, it's really cool that the head teacher made the time to do that. So then moving on, the later part of the admissions process, how did you find your interview, and what was the interview what you expected?
I think I didn't know what to expect, is my honest answer for the interview. I think people tell you it's, it can be so many different things. And I think also the interviews possibly vary college by college a little bit. But I was interviewed at Jesus College. I had 2 sort of 20-minute interviews. And so one was sort of human geography focused and one was physical geography focused. I think that's probably quite standard for geography. The human geography one, I had about an hour of sort of pre-reading type stuff. And throughout both of those interviews, I was being asked questions about sort of geography in general, specific things. So like the interviewers themselves are often, they are specialists in a specific topic. So they're likely to be asking you stuff around that, for example. I was expecting to be asked quite a bit about my personal statement. I was only asked one question about that, actually. But yeah, broadly speaking, questions about geography. With the human geography, it was kind of what I thought about this text that I had been doing for pre-reading, how I interpreted it, if I had any questions about it, like did I agree with it? Did I not? That kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah. And afterwards, how did you feel like they went, the interviews?
Yeah, so I first had a physical geography interview and I thought that went terrible. The questions were difficult. I was told by my head teacher, I think, you're going to feel like you're trying to grasp at the answer and it's just too far away. And I felt like that a lot. The answer was there, but it wasn't, if that makes sense. I tried my best to talk through and really sort of vocalize my thoughts, which I think is a key thing. But yeah, I struggled. After the end of the physical one, I felt that this is terrible. I then later in the day had my hour of pre-reading. I thought, this is an interesting source. This is questionable. I'm not sure I agree with all of this. I went into the interview. It was really interesting, the kind of conversations we were having. They picked me up on my personal statement a bit, and I was really able to talk about like the parts of geography I'm passionate about. So after that one, I felt much better. So it's sort of a story of two halves, really. One I felt went terribly. The other one I felt went really well.
Nice.
And then I thought towards the end of it, I was like, well, there's some balance. Broadly, I think I did okay, but not really, if that makes sense. And I was kind of like, I probably won't get an offer after that. If the first one went well, the first one didn't go well. The second one did go well. The first one's probably going to drag me down, and I'm not going to get the offer.
Yeah, but I think even I think that feeling of you're trying to grasp the answer, you're close, but not quite there. I think even when the interview is going well, they'll always keep pushing you.
Yeah.
And until you get to that point where you're kind of close to the answer, but not quite reaching it, and which is naturally going to make you feel like this isn't going well. But you might have gotten a lot further into the topic, into the line questioning than the other candidates.
I think for my human geography one, I was more comfortable with the themes being talked about. I was more exposed to that kind of like geography in my A levels, whereas the physical geography one, we talked quite a bit about sort of ice sheets from what I can remember, and I hadn't studied anything to do with the cryosphere or ice at A level. So in that sense, I felt really out of my depth. Whereas the other one, I felt like I had experienced this kind of material before, and I sort of could get a sense of where it was going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, ice sheets. I imagine that was Rebecca.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, but I think she wouldn't expect applicants to be well versed in ice sheets, and would be open to see how they deal with that. And I think I've also seen. I've heard Marcus talk about applicants who go into a topic where they think they know a lot, and you can then kind of give almost dogmatic answers. So it's.
I think learning a line is not learning. If they ask me this question, this is what I'm going to answer. I don't think that's the way to approach it. It's like I kind of get a sense of this topic. I'm going to try and articulate an answer that I think is thoughtful and argues well, rather than I have a script. If they ask me this question, answer.
I think I completely hear how your interview experiences went, but I think no two interviews are the same. So anyone who's watching and thinks, oh, it's a good interview is when we talk about something that I know well, and a bad interview is when they throw me in the deep end. There'll be another candidate who has the complete opposite experience, and the stuff that they thought they knew really well maybe didn't go as well as they had hoped, and the one where they had to start completely afresh actually went a lot better than they realized. And you just never know. So after the interviews, there's the winter pool. Can you explain a bit about what the winter pool is for anyone who doesn't know, and what the pooling process was like?
Yeah, so the winter pool is broadly this thing that exists when, some colleges tend to have a number of sort of spots that they're kind of thinking, we want to give offers to this number. They have a large number of like applicants they think are really competitive, and they think, well, we think these people can fill these spots, but actually these people are also competitive applicants. We'll put them in this thing called the winter pool. And then other colleges where potentially they're looking to fill a few spots, or just look at what the other sort of candidates might be like. They have a look at those people and they say, well, actually we'd quite like that person, and you get pooled to a different college. That's how it works. So I applied to Jesus College. I had my interviews there, and I got pooled here. So when you receive your offer, I got a little email that popped up that said Trinity Hall. It's like, well, I didn't apply to Trinity Hall, so hopefully this is good news. It says you've been pooled, and we'd like to offer you a place here.
Nice. That's really cool. And the winter pool is there so that the best applicants get a place at Cambridge. I think it's a really good system. Given that Trinity Hall wasn't the college that you applied to, how has it been like studying here so far?
I've really enjoyed it. Trinity Hall is the kind of spaces we have here, the greenery. It's a beautiful college. It's so compared to like Jesus College, it's a little bit smaller and more compact. There's a space called Wychfield, which is a bit further out than Central Site. But the greenery and sort of the space itself is really beautiful. The buildings are impressive, and it's a wonderful place to be. The people I've met are really nice. I think irrespective of the college you go to, you will meet really nice people. You'll find a home at any college, and that's definitely the case with Trinity Hall.
Yeah, because now that you've been here for 2 terms, could you imagine like being at a different college and being with different people?
No, I don't think so. It's interesting because I suppose you would. It's like you would fit in anywhere, but the people you meet, friends here, you're like, I would never have met this person had I not been pooled. That's I can't imagine what that wouldn't be like now.
Yeah.
So the other geographers here at Trinity Hall are really friendly. They're really kind. They are amazing people, and not having known them, that I can't really comprehend that. It's like that's happened. That's amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and I think that's a similar with colleges in general. No, like no matter which college you go to, you'll end up really liking it, and not being able to imagine what it would have been like at a different college, as you said. So the other thing I wanted to ask was, for anyone who doesn't know, can you explain the difference between Central Site and Wychfield?
Yeah, so Central Site is where we are now. It's so the old part of the college.
Yeah.
It's mainly where like first years live. There's a lecture theatre here. This is where the library is. It's very close to the river. Wychfield is broadly like where accommodation for older years is.
Yeah.
There's sort of sports facilities out there, football pitches. There's a gym, netball, and sort of tennis court.
Yeah.
It's got lots of nice green space. We have green space here in Central Site, but it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
We're sort of compacted between Trinity College and Clare College. Wychfield is a bit sort of further out. It's, I'd say, maybe 15-minute cycle, something like that. So it's not too far away. There's a dining hall here on Central Site. The library, there's a chapel. And there's other facilities out in Wychfield where other people, more sort of older years live.
Yeah. There's, as you said, there's like sporting facilities at Wychfield. And the accommodation is like really new, if I'm right.
Yeah, there's like they're like townhouse type things. There is other accommodation, but I think it was built in the early 2000s, so it's quite new.
Maybe later,
yeah. But yeah, I've had a look. We did this thing called we had an evening with people in our college family, like our college parents,
nice.
And that was really interesting to have a look around and see the green space and houses.
Nice. Yeah, and if you wanted to know what the accommodation looks like at Trinity Hall, on our website there's a virtual tour, so you can look through the rooms and look through the college and Wychfield without having to come here. But also, if you're able to come for an open day, you can check out both the college Central Sites and Wychfield. And we also have another accommodation set, Wing Gardens, which is also in the city centre, a bit closer than Wychfield, just probably a 5-minute walk from here. So before, once you'd received your offer, or maybe during application process, what did you think Cambridge would be like?
I thought it would be quite maybe like quite stuffy and maybe a bit posh and not very inclusive, but I now know that to be very wrong. It's a wonderful place, but I had this perception of Cambridge as this scary, intimidating sort of place where everything is about academics, and that from the outside that looks quite intimidating and scary. That's not really the case.
So what would like the general consensus be for your friends in school and people people from your school in general about Cambridge?
I think, a bit like Oxford, they're more than just a university. They have this sort of sense of grandeur and a place of sort of top-notch sort of academia, but also I don't want to say, maybe, I was going to say posh and sort of elite and not very inclusive for everyone. Not a place where everyone can come and sort of feel like this is their home. It's a very sort of closed off space in that sense. I'd say that my perception as a sixth former of it's a place where you study to do the best in sort of academia, but it's also a very close sort of like an elite sort of place. I think that's wrong. That's not what it's really like. But that was definitely my perception when I was first considering maybe I shouldn't come to Cambridge, maybe I shouldn't try and apply. But I'm glad I did apply, and I realised actually it's a wonderful place to come and study.
So did those kind of preconceptions about Cambridge make you hesitate with the application process?
I think so, yeah. I think with, it's a sense like all universities, you're not going to know anyone. Are you going to make new friends? Are you going to be able to fit in? You get that at any university. But in a place like Cambridge, it feels more, it feels a bit more extreme. It's like people from everywhere. You're going to feel maybe like you're not of the quality everyone else is. You're not potentially good enough to be here. I think that's probably the kind of thoughts I had in my head, like, is this the place I want to be? But I think you get to know that actually it's a really lovely place. There are wonderful people here.
Yeah.
And if you are passionate about your subject and you love your subject, it's a really good place to come and study.
Do you remember like what made you decide that you're going to make an application?
I think for me personally, I was committed to something like geography, but Cambridge in particular is probably after I came to this open day and I thought, actually, it's not what it seems. The people I talk to, because when you have open days, there are sort of student volunteers you can talk to and get a sense of what is it like to study here. And they seemed like very normal people. They seemed very approachable. They were very kind and smiley and bubbly. And even so there was a couple of talks I went to at the geography department on the open day, and the people there were really friendly, wanted to talk to you, wanted to make you feel like this is a place you can come to and be welcome. So it was probably that sense of coming here, meeting people, speaking to them and realizing actually people are human beings. It's not that intimidating. It's a really wonderful place.
Nice. And how has it been so far? Like the first 2 times, what have the people been like?
Yeah, really nice. I think the college in particular, I think the college system, sort of the smaller size of compared to other universities, you see the same kind of people every day. You sort of see sort of familiar faces, people smile, and you make friends with people who are here. The people I've met have been wonderful.
Yeah, nice. And would you say people are posh at Cambridge?
No, no, I wouldn't. I'd say people are normal here. They're normal like everywhere. People are wonderful to talk to. They're like you in the sense that they love they love their subject. And even if that's a different subject, you can maybe try and bond over that and be like, actually, can we have a little conversation about this? And also people are more than their subject. They do sports or clubs and societies, and you relate to them on a very human level. And people are very normal and approachable and kind. And
nice. Yeah, that's lovely. And I think one thing that people associate Cambridge and Oxford with is that they kind of would assume that the culture would be quite not just posh but kind of traditional and conservative. Would you say amongst like the student body, is it like a conservative atmosphere?
No, I don't think so. I think it's in the sense that we have stuff like formal dinners where people put on their gowns. That feels very formal. That feels not like many universities. But in terms of the student body and people being kind and approachable and wanting to hear your opinions and listening to other people's opinions and being like, yeah, these are kind, lovely people. It's a very normal university in that sense.
So would I be right in thinking that, because from what I've seen, the students themselves are very progressive and confident and free to be themselves, not fit into the traditional conform to traditional forms? And so would I be right in thinking the students themselves are quite free, but at appearances like formals, some of the the architecture or the formals appear to be quite traditional and conservative?
Yeah, I think so. I think how it looks and then how it actually is, they can be quite different. I think somewhere like Cambridge is a place where everyone is welcome in Trinity Hall. Everyone is listened to, and everyone is respected. Everyone is kind and open to other people and meeting people who are different to them and who are, before I came to university, I socialized with a very specific group of people. I have a twin brother, so I spend a lot of time with him. And coming to like any university, you meet so many new people who are open to new ideas and who think differently to you, and that's okay. That's fine. That's important. And that makes living here interesting and fun. And great.
Nice. Yeah. It is a very exciting place to be. For anyone who doesn't know, Cambridge is made up of colleges, as you mentioned. We're at Trinity Hall right now. Can you explain what a college is and how a college is different to University of Cambridge?
Yeah. So colleges are sort of mainly, so it's where you sort of live. So I live here in Central Site. I'm part of a sort of Trinity Hall community. And the colleges are sort of their own little communities where people live and they socialise, but people socialise beyond that. Here in Cambridge, so for example, with geography, I have my lectures at the geography department. I have sort of computer practicals and other practical type stuff in the department. Within the college itself, we have sort of supervisions, which are sort of unique to Cambridge, and it's small groups, and those are broadly within the college. Although for a subject like geography here, so we have quite a lot of our supervisions within the college with our director of studies. But we also sometimes have them at other colleges, and we sort of move around. But I'd say there are sort of small community where people mainly sort of live. The sort of teaching happens outside of the colleges. We have college libraries, so you might spend a lot of time in college doing studying and that kind of thing. But they're mainly where you live, and your supervisions happen.
So every student, all the students belong to the university, but each student will belong to their own college. Nice. And in terms of like societies, can you explain how are there university societies and college societies?
Yes, so there are sort of larger university-wide societies. So, for example, there's a geography society, and they put on events. I think they did like geography jogs, but they also have like seminars and talks and that kind of thing. So I've gone to quite a few of them. They've been really interesting. There are societies and clubs sort of within colleges themselves. So, for example, the college has lots of its own sports teams, like rowing, or like each college might have a football team, or hockey, that kind of thing, or netball. And then there are also like broader university-wide kind of sports teams. In terms of like, there's like social stuff, so maybe like there isn't a geography society within Trinity Hall. There aren't that many of us, but there are other like people do music and drama and that kind of thing within college.
Nice. And I was quite curious to know what kind of things have you been up to outside of geography, what kind of societies, etc.
So I do the geography society. I went to a talk. There's a geographer called Danny Dorling, who I actually wrote a little bit about my personal statement. He came to visit and do a talk that I really like that, because he talked about Sheffield, where I'm from. And that's really incredible to be like, I read your books, I read your stuff, and you're coming here to come and talk. I do college football, so I play football for Trinity Hall's football team. That kind of thing. I think there are lots of different things you can do. Some people do more sort of sports stuff. Some people do more like maybe like performing arts, that kind of thing. It's really what you make it. I like to. I like to spend quite a bit of time sort of just out in the college, and like there's a good place to sit on the tit wall. But also like Wychfield is a nice place to be, going for walks around, that kind of thing. Taking a break from studying is definitely important.
Nice. And the wall is by the river, right?
So the wall sort of overlooks the Cam, and the library, the Jerwood, is right next to it. And you get, I was sat in the Jerwood the other day, and you get this beautiful sun coming in. You can sit on the wall. when the weather is nice, it's great.
Yeah.
And you can look at the people going past on the punts.
Yeah.
Really nice place to be.
Yeah. The other day I was walking across the bridge and you can see like the wall, the Trinity Wall, and there's just like so many students just sitting on the wall and like soaking up the sun, and it just looked like the place to be.
I think it depends on the weather, but provided the weather is right, it's a great place to be.
Yeah. Normally it's very good in the summer, and we have Trinity Hall punts. There's like boats. Trinity Hall has their own punts that you can hire and go up and down the river on the boats, which is really fun. I guess the weather hasn't been nice enough for you to do that yet.
We did that like within Freshers' Week, so the first week to meet new people. I think it was called like staircase punting. So we did it with the people on our specific staircase. But you got to be careful not to fall in. Make sure you stay dry. But it's definitely a fun thing to do. It's a great way to see the other colleges along the backs, like King's College Chapel. Really impressive. But it's a great thing to do and do with other people.
Nice. That sounds really wholesome. And one thing we were talking about before we started the podcast was you were talking about how Cambridge is quite flat and quite different to Sheffield. Like, how has that been like?
Yeah. So Sheffield, I live quite near the Peak District, so beautiful sort of hills and landscape. In Cambridge is different. It's quite flat here. There's quite a lot of fields around. It's a different kind of, as a geographer, I love landscape, whatever it is. And so being able to take that in, it's not so great for like going hill walking, for example. There aren't many hills to walk around, but for cycling, it's a great place. Or sort of strolls. I like going to out to sort of the surrounding villages, have a look, just taking in the greenery. It's the landscape is different, but it's different in a good way. Like, I don't think it's better or worse in that sense. It's just different to what I'm used to. But it's good for cycling because you can get quite far without having to go up or down.
That's true. Have you been to Grantchester Meadows yet?
No, I haven't.
No?
I've been to, there's a village called Cotton, which is sort of out towards the west of Cambridge, and there's an American sort of war cemetery that I've been to have a look at that was really interesting as well.
Nice.
I think you got to be careful on the little lanes with your bike. But if you're careful, it's a great way to explore and have a look sort of beyond the pocket and the sort of small city that Cambridge is.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, the fact that the city is flat means you can whiz around everywhere on your bike, but it does mean that it can be hard to see the sunset, to see a good view. But Grantchester Meadows is really nice in the summer. It's like these meadows. That's not too far from central Cambridge. It's quite close to Newnham College. It was the Bloomsbury group, like a group of artists and writers, were quite famous for spending a lot of time in Grantchester Meadows, and they're kind of described as neo-pagans. But so there's a bit of a history with previous famous Cambridge intellectuals and artists who spent a lot of time there, which is cool. And lastly, for anyone who's thinking of applying and for whatever reason they're thinking maybe Cambridge isn't for them, or I don't know, they're unsure of whether they'll get in, what advice would you have for anyone who's kind of hesitating with an application?
I think if you're unsure about if you're going to get in, or like if this is the place for you, just sort of, it sounds corny, but go for it. Because this is the place, Cambridge is a place for everyone. It's a very inclusive place. It's a very welcoming place. I think I was definitely concerned when I was applying that I wasn't up to scratch. I wasn't good enough to apply. But if if you love your subject and you're passionate about it, this is the place to be. No one is, I had this sense that everyone was super intelligent and I wasn't going to be able to get in because I wasn't smart enough. But it's about loving your subject and really being interested in it and wanting to learn more. So if you love that and you love the subject you're doing, be that geography or anything, this is definitely the place you want to try and apply to. And I'd say just go for it. Like just go for it and have a go. and you might end up here. It's the place that's welcoming for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say just go for it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And you're right in that if you love your subjects, then that for a lot of cases is will be enough to get them over the line. Yeah, because I think it feeds into all the other aspects of the application process. Well, thank you, Sam, for a really interesting podcast and sharing with us sort of what your application process is like and how your time at Cambridge has been like so far. And thank you to the viewers for watching. If you're in the middle of the application process, you're thinking about applying to Cambridge, we've done a lot of podcasts on the admissions process, on personal statements, interviews, admissions assessments, my Cambridge application. So do have a look at the other videos we've done. And we've also done a lot of podcasts on specific subjects. So if you're wanting to hear from a student or an academic talking about the subject that you think of applying, we've almost done podcasts on all the subjects. So do have a look out for that. And we'll see you guys next time. Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, how was that?
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah.